I sit here in my luxurious mansion in Østerbro, Copenhagen, a knot of doubt tightening in my stomach. My beautiful fiancée, from a prominent family, watches me with eager anticipation, her mind already calculating extravagant expenses. An unexpected accident, however, will soon reveal the true nature of those around me, forever changing the course of my life. Before we delve into this captivating tale, please tell me in the comments from which city you are watching, and give us a like to continue following our stories. It was 7:30 a.m. when the opulent Swiss-imported alarm clock chimed in the master bedroom of the Drummond residence. Kay Drummond, 32 years old, stirred in his king-sized bed, the sheets 1,000-thread count Egyptian cotton. Through the expansive French windows overlooking the manicured garden, the first rays of sunlight illuminated a day that would irrevocably alter his life. "You're awake, my love," a voice purred. Letitia appeared in the doorway, draped in an exclusive crimson silk chemise that matched her perfectly applied lipstick. The scent of her 400-kroner French perfume filled the air. "We can't postpone it, can we?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with an excitement that seemed almost predatory. "The merger with Revere Embediments is exhausting me." Kay sighed, running a hand through his impeccably styled hair. Letitia's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "We've already postponed it 3 months, Kay. Don't you want to marry me?" Before he could answer, a soft knock echoed through the room. It was Maren, the housekeeper, who had served the family for 5 years. Dressed in a simple grey uniform with a crisp white apron, she entered with breakfast, her gaze demure. "Here you are, sir," she said softly, her voice a gentle melody. "Freshly squeezed orange juice and whole wheat toast, just as you like it." "Thank you, Maren," Kay replied, noticing the slight tremor in her hands as she carefully placed the tray on a side table. Letitia rolled her eyes. "Oh, Maren, couldn't you have waited until we finished our conversation?" she said dismissively. "And please change out of that uniform. It looks at least 2 days old." Maren nodded, her gaze still lowered, but Kay caught a flicker of something in her eyes. "There's no need to speak to her like that," he interjected firmly. "Maren is just doing her job. Whatever you say." Letitia waved a dismissive hand, checking her latest smartphone. "The ring I chose cost 2,200 kroner, and you haven't even said if you like it." In that moment, something clicked in Kay's mind. 3 years of a relationship, and he had never seen Letitia express concern for anyone other than herself. The doubt that had plagued him for months solidified into a wild idea. "Do you truly love me, or do you love my money?" The words slipped out before he could stop them. Letitia's face registered shock, then a calculated indignation. "How can you ask me that?" Her voice trembled theatrically. As they argued, Maren quietly slipped out of the room, but not before Kay noticed something in her eyes. It was compassion. Later that day, during a meeting with his best friend and personal physician, Hans Gonçal, Kay confided his plan. "You're completely insane," Gonçal said, adjusting his glasses as he reviewed Kay's latest medical reports. "Pretending to be temporarily paralyzed to test if your fiancé truly loves you. It's only for 2 weeks," Kay insisted, tapping his fingers nervously on the mahogany desk. "I'll say I injured myself at the gym, a temporary spinal injury. I want to see who is truly by my side for me, not for my status." Gonçal shook his head. "Technically, I won't be violating any ethics if I simply remain silent about your charade," he muttered. "But this will end badly, I warn you." By 6:15 p.m., everything was in place. Gonçal called Letitia with a grave voice, explaining that Kay had been injured during a workout. "Temporary paralysis below the waist," he said. "He'll require constant care for at least 2 weeks." Letitia's reaction was immediate and dramatic. She arrived at the private clinic where Kay was hospitalized, her eyes red-rimmed from tears that seemed rehearsed. She wore a black ensemble more suited for a photo shoot than a visit to a sick loved one. "My love," she exclaimed, rushing towards the hospital bed. "What will we do now?" Kay, playing his part perfectly, took her hand with a pained expression. "The doctor says it's temporary, but I'll need help with everything," he said. Absolutely everything. He saw a flicker of horror flash in Letitia's eyes. "Of course, darling," she replied, though her voice had lost its earlier enthusiasm. "I'll be with you every minute." But that night, as Kay was transferred back to the mansion, Letitia already had an excuse. "I need to handle cancelling the wedding arrangements," she explained, applying a 600 krona hand cream. "I've hired nurses, but they can only start tomorrow. Can you manage tonight?" It was then that Maren, who had remained in the shadows, stepped forward. "I can take care of him tonight, Signorita," she offered, her voice firm yet respectful. "My grandmother was bedridden for 3 years. I know how to care for someone in this condition." Letitia looked visibly relieved, almost grateful for an out. "Wonderful. I'll pay you overtime," she said, though everyone knew Kay would be the one paying. "I'll call you tomorrow, my love." The kiss she bestowed on Kay's forehead was as fleeting as it was insincere. As the main door closed behind Letitia, an awkward silence filled the room. Kay watched as Maren meticulously arranged the fake medications prescribed by Gonçal. "You don't have to do this," he said, a pang of guilt surfacing. "I can call someone else." Maren looked him directly in the eye for the first time in years. Her warm, sincere brown eyes were a stark contrast to Letitia's cold calculation. "I'm doing it because I want to, sir," she replied with a dignity that rendered him speechless. "No one deserves to suffer alone." In her voice, in the way her hands, calloused from hard work, gently adjusted his pillows, there was a tenderness that tightened Kay's throat. For the first time in years, someone saw him as a man, not a bank account. And that night, feigning sleep, he heard Maren softly speaking on the phone. "Mother, I'll be home late. Sir Kay needs me." No, not because of the money. No one deserves to suffer alone, not even the rich. In that moment, Kay understood his plan might uncover far more than he had anticipated. And as the moon illuminated the room, a silent tear traced a path down his cheek. The test had begun, but he had already discovered a truth that would forever change his heart. The German imported wall clock showed 8:45 a.m. as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the Egyptian cotton curtains in the master bedroom. Kay was on his feet by 6, trapped in a charade he had orchestrated. Throughout the night, he had to maintain his composure each time Maren quietly entered to check if he needed anything, resisting the urge to confess his deception as he witnessed her tired yet resolute care. The sound of heels echoing on the Italian marble hallway announced Letitia's arrival. She entered like a scented whirlwind, dressed in a 6,000 krona suit and jewelry that gleamed in the morning light. "Good morning, my love," she greeted, maintaining a cautious distance from the bed. "How was your night?" Before Kay could answer, Letitia turned to Maren, who was discreetly preparing a breakfast tray. "Why isn't the nurse I hired here yet?" she asked with poorly concealed irritation. Maren, with noticeable dark circles under her eyes but a straight posture, calmly replied, "She called half an hour ago, Signorita. Said she was delayed due to traffic on the waterfront." Letitia snorted and pulled out her latest smartphone. "Unbelievable. We're paying 1,000 kroner a day, and she's not even punctual." Kay observed the scene with newfound interest. In the 5 years Maren had worked for him, he had never truly noticed her. Her movements were efficient yet gentle, her presence constant yet unobtrusive. Now, he noticed the details. How she precisely remembered how much sugar he liked in his coffee. How she neatly placed the newspaper open to the economic section he read each morning. "Thank you for staying the night, Maren," Kay said, surprising both her and Letitia with the sincerity in his voice. Maren offered a barely perceptible smile, quickly suppressing it. "No need to thank me, sir." Letitia narrowed her eyes, sensing something unusual in their exchange. "Well, you may go rest," she ordered with a casual wave. "The nurse will take over now." "I'd prefer Maren to stay," Kay interjected firmly. "I'm comfortable with her care." A tense silence filled the room. Letitia blinked 3 times, processing his words. "As you wish," she finally conceded, checking her diamond-encrusted platinum watch. "I have an appointment with Carl at the spa at 10. It's impossible to cancel." I've been waiting a month for this exclusive treatment. Kay nodded slowly. The first day of his feigned paralysis, and Letitia was already prioritizing a cosmetic procedure. Of course, I understand, he replied, watching her reaction closely. Health first. A flicker of relief crossed Letitia's perfectly made-up face. I knew you'd understand. My love, you're always so understanding. She leaned in and gave him a light kiss on the cheek. I'll be back for lunch, perhaps. As the door closed behind her, Maren silently continued tidying the room. Kay watched her for a few minutes, observing the care she took with his belongings, even the most insignificant. May I ask you something, Maren? He finally said. She paused, surprised by his initiative. Of course, sir. Why did you stay last night? You could have waited for the professional nurse. Maren seemed to ponder his question. My mother always says money can't buy genuine care, sir, she replied, neatly adjusting the pillows. A nurse might know the procedures, but they don't know your habits, what brings you comfort. And in difficult times, it's those little things that matter. Something in the profound simplicity of her answer struck a long dormant chord within Kay. When was the last time someone had cared about his comfort, not his wealth? At 11:20 a.m., the intercom buzzed. It was Gonçal, who entered the room with his medical bag, perfectly playing his part in the charade. Good morning, Kay, he greeted professionally, closing the door. How is our patient today? Maren was about to excuse herself to give them privacy, but Kay stopped her. You can stay, Maren. I trust you. The words came out naturally, and only after he uttered them did Kay realize the truth behind them. He did, in fact, trust her more than many people in his social circle. Gonçal raised an eyebrow but proceeded with the mock medical examination. When he finished, he delivered his rehearsed diagnosis. The paralysis persists, but I see good signs. With proper therapy, you may regain mobility in about 2 weeks. 2 weeks? Letitia's voice echoed from the doorway. She had returned unexpectedly, her hair perfectly styled, her expression of concern not reaching her eyes. Can't it be less, doctor? Gonçal maintained his professional composure. One doesn't joke with the spine, señorita. 2 weeks is an optimistic prognosis. Kay watched his fiancé's face subtly shift, calculating the inconvenience this situation would bring her. We have the Andrade charity dinner this weekend, Letitia remarked, as if attending a social event were more important than her fiancé's health. Everyone will be there. You can go without me, Kay offered, watching her reaction intently. But we've invested 45,000 kroner in our matching outfits, she exclaimed, before quickly regaining her composure. That is, I wouldn't be able to enjoy myself knowing you're here suffering, my love. Their exchange was interrupted by the arrival of Elio Drummond, Kay's father, a man of 70, with that certain gravitas only decades of wealth can bestow. Despite his age, his presence commanded immediate respect. What the hell happened? He demanded, striding into the room. I learned from my assistant that my son is paralyzed, and no one bothered to call me directly. Letitia instantly adopted a helpful posture. I tried to reach you last night, but your secretary said you were in an important meeting in Tokyo. The elder man ignored the remark and approached his son's bedside. His usually impassive face displayed genuine concern. Kay, how did this happen? As Kay spun his fabricated tale of a gym accident, he noticed something extraordinary. Maren silently placed a cup of hot tea beside his father, precisely as he liked it. Black, no sugar, with a slice of lemon. A detail Letitia, after 3 years of dating, didn't even know. Elio automatically reached for the cup, thanking the maid with a nod. That simple gesture revealed another facet of Maren to Kay. She observed and remembered what was important to each person, expecting no recognition. The doctor says I'll need constant care for 2 weeks, Kay explained, observing the varied reactions in the room. Elio nodded resolutely. I'll hire the best medical team, he declared, reaching for his phone. I've already taken care of that, Mr. Elio, Letitia interjected quickly. I have everything under control. The elder man gave her a critical look. And how do you plan to reconcile that with your busy social calendar, dear? He asked, his tone suggesting he already knew the answer. Letitia paled slightly. Kay's well-being is my absolute priority, she replied with rehearsed firmness. Of course, I have commitments I cannot cancel without impacting the company's image, as you understand. Elio emitted a sound that could be interpreted as a dry chuckle. Of course, he replied with thinly veiled irony. The company's image. Maren, sensing the rising tension, began to quietly withdraw. Elio noticed. You are Maren, aren't you? He asked, surprising everyone. Donata Ivana's daughter, who worked for our family for 20 years. Maren was clearly surprised to be recognized. Yes, sir. My mother always spoke of your family with great respect. Elio nodded approvingly. Donata Ivana was the only person, besides my late wife, who knew how to care for this house as a home, not a museum. He turned to his son. If you need someone to fully trust during your recovery, she would be my recommendation. The patriarch's words sounded like an explosion in the room. Letitia could barely conceal her indignation. Mr. Elio, I have already hired qualified professionals. Maren has her household duties. I can do both. Maren interjected with a firmness that surprised everyone, including herself. She immediately lowered her gaze. If Mr. K prefers it that way, of course. The decision solidified in K's mind with crystalline clarity. I want Maren to coordinate my care, he stated, understanding he was raising the stakes of his own game. I trust her judgment. Letitia's face contorted into a mask of barely suppressed irritation, while Elio smiled with poorly concealed approval. Excellent, the elder man concluded. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to speak with my son alone. As everyone exited the room, Elio sat beside the bed, studying his son with a piercing gaze that had intimidated hundreds of executives over 4 decades. What are you really up to, Kay? He asked directly. I've known you since birth. You're not paralyzed? The shock momentarily rendered Kay speechless. His father had always been astute, but this surpassed all expectations, and Elias smirked. He had noticed Kay's slight foot movement when Letitia mentioned the Andrade dinner, surmising it was a twitch of irritation. Cornered, Kay decided to confide in his father, explaining his plan, his doubts about Letitia's true feelings, and his need to know who was genuinely there for him, not for his money. To his surprise, Elio did not reprimand him. Instead, a shadow of sadness crossed his face, and he quietly confessed that Kay's mother had done something similar to him before accepting his proposal, pretending the family had temporarily lost its fortune, which caused all suitors to disappear, except one. Kay was astonished, realizing how little he knew about his own mother, and Elio, sighing, added that she was extraordinary not for her beauty or lineage, but for her ability to see into people's souls, just like Maren. Kay instinctively objected that she wasn't his Maren, feeling a strange warmth on his cheeks, to which Elio responded with a gentle smile. Not yet. He promised to support his game, but warned that even well-intentioned deceptions have consequences. After his father left, Kay sank into conflicting thoughts. The comparison to his mother deeply affected him, and he wondered if he was truly seeking truth or merely justifying his preconceived notions about Letitia. His thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock. It was Maren, with a carefully prepared lunch. She entered with a quiet confidence, offering vegetable soup and roasted chicken with herbs, just as he liked it. As she placed it on the table, Kay noticed the burns on her hands and, with genuine concern, asked about them. But Maren, surprised, tried to hide her hands, explaining it was just a minor kitchen incident. He insisted, and forgetting his paralysis, gently took her hands, examining the reddened marks, softly advising her to treat the burns and asking why she hadn't worn gloves. Maren calmly explained that Letitia had demanded the lunch be ready immediately, and there was no time. It was the simplicity of her answer and her complete lack of resentment that touched Kay as nothing had in years. The woman he had seen daily for 5 years, yet never truly noticed, accepted injustice with dignity, forcing him to re-examine his own life. He firmly instructed her to always wear gloves and, for the first time, saw her genuine smile, bright, serene, unlike any of Letitia's jewels. A new tone emerged in her voice, almost one of complicity. As Maren left, Kay realized with painful clarity that after 32 years of luxury, he had never understood the value of sincere care, the kind that couldn't be bought. His test for Letitia was revealing far deeper truths than he had anticipated. And for the first time in years, he stopped checking his phone and the stock market, simply waiting for Maren to enter the room again. At dawn, the Drummond mansion glittered like a scattering of diamonds, and at 6:10 a.m. on the third day of the charade, Kay lay awake, replaying the events of the past 2 days until the soft sound of a door interrupted his thoughts. He expected to see Maren, but it was Letitia who entered, a wound in her impeccably dressed form in an emerald haute couture gown, a practiced smile on her lips. She greeted him, saying she wanted to surprise him, and Kay noticed she had brought a newspaper and a cup of coffee. For the first time in 3 years, she had brought him breakfast. He responded with interest, and she confessed she had been thinking a lot and hadn't been a worthy fiancé in this situation, though her voice sounded rehearsed. Kay took a sip of coffee and immediately realized it was too sweet. She still didn't know his tastes. Thanking her, he set the cup down. Letitia continued, saying his father had made her reconsider her priorities, and she had even cancelled some appointments before the Andrade dinner. Kay was surprised, as this was the most important event of the year for her, but she abruptly interrupted him, placing her hand on his and beginning to talk about the best therapies and an expensive rehabilitation center in Grådighed. As she spoke enthusiastically about treatments and specialists, Kay noticed movement at the door. Maren appeared quietly, but upon seeing their proximity, she silently retreated. Something in her expression, a mixture of surprise and perhaps disappointment, caused Kay an inexplicable discomfort. "Are you listening to me, Kay?" Letitia's slightly irritated voice pulled him back to reality, and she continued, saying they could go to Grådighed as soon as the doctors allowed his transport, adding that his private jet could be equipped with medical equipment. He thanked her for her concern, but replied he preferred to recover at home, his thoughts turning to Maren and her indispensable care, mentioning that Gonçalo considered his progress good, which caused Letitia's face to tighten subtly. She agreed, assuring him she wanted only the best for him. But their conversation was interrupted by Eller Drummond, who entered with confident steps, still imposing at 70, in a perfectly fitting grey suit. He greeted them, surveying the scene with an experienced eye, noting that his son was in good hands. Letitia immediately changed her demeanor, explaining they were just discussing treatment options. Elio's attention was soon drawn to the untouched cup of coffee, and at that moment, Maren appeared at the door with a tray, impeccably dressed and with her hair neatly tied back, hesitating slightly at the sight of everyone present. She apologized and offered to return later, but Elio warmly invited her in, saying his son needed to eat properly. Letitia watched tensely as Maren arranged the breakfast. Perfectly toasted bread, an omelette, and black coffee with a spoonful of sugar. Exactly how Kay liked it. He thanked her, his voice involuntarily softening, and Maren discreetly removed the untouched cup Letitia had brought, leaving an awkward silence in the room. Interrupted by Letitia, who demonstratively glanced at her diamond watch and declared she had to attend a foundation meeting. She gave Kay a quick peck on the cheek and added that she would be back for dinner, having ordered food from Chef Enrique's restaurant. As she left, Elio sat by the window and remarked that in 3 years of dating, she still hadn't learned how Kay liked his coffee. Kay tried to defend her, but without much conviction, his father ironically observed that it coincided with a threat to her plan for a lavish wedding. Maren, adjusting pillows, tensed at the word paralysis, and Kay noticed it immediately, asking her to leave them alone. When she left, he gently chided his father for his carelessness, but the elder man waved it off, assuring him that Maren was too decent to eavesdrop, unlike his fiancée. Kay tried to object, but Elio softened, recounting how his mother had told him before her death that their son lacked only one person who would love him for himself, not his wealth. These words struck Kay, and his father added that he had seen Maren in the library the previous evening, studying medical books and taking notes, explaining that the internet offered general knowledge, but Kay was not a general case. The realization that she had spent hours learning how to care for him, while Letitia sought out luxurious resorts, tightened his throat. He didn't know what to say, and his father simply advised him to observe, as he had observed his mother for 40 years. After his departure, Kay sank into memories of his mother, an elegant, just, and genuinely caring woman who respected every person, and he wondered when he himself had lost those values. His contemplation was interrupted by a knock, and Maren entered with medication, softly apologizing and carefully measuring the dose. Now, Kay noticed everything: her movements, her concentration, her care. He impulsively asked why she worked there, noting her intelligence and dedication. And Maren, after a moment's thought, calmly replied that her mother had fallen ill 6 years ago, and they needed money for treatment. Her recommendation opened the doors to this house, and the salary he paid allowed her to receive the necessary medical care. "You could have found another job once she got better," Kay insisted, genuinely curious. A faint smile touched Maren's lips. "I could have," she admitted, "but I learned a lot here. Mrs. Sandra had an impressive library, and she allowed me to borrow books when I finished my duties." The mention of his mother surprised Kay. "You knew my mother?" Maren nodded, and for the first time, Kay saw genuine emotion on her face. "I worked here in the last year of her life," she explained softly. "She taught me everything I know about managing this house, but more importantly, she taught me dignity." "Dignity," Kay repeated, feeling an unexpected connection to the past. "Yes," Maren confirmed, her eyes shining with memories. "One day she told me, 'Maren, true dignity lies not in what you have, but in how you treat others and yourself. Never forget that.'" Those words resonated deeply with Kay. They were so characteristic of his mother that he could almost hear her speak them. "That sounds exactly like her," he murmured, feeling a pang of pain and nostalgia. Maren seemed to hesitate before continuing. "In her last week," she said softly, when she was already very weak, "she asked me to promise one thing." "What did she ask you?" Kay asked, holding his breath. "She asked me to take care of you," Maren replied, her cheeks slightly flushed. "Not the house or your possessions, but you. She said you knew a lot about business, but little about what truly matters in life." This revelation washed over Kay like a wave. His mother, even in her final days, had thought of his future, not his financial success, but his true happiness. "You never told me," he said, barely audible. "It didn't seem like my place, sir," she simply replied. "Besides, you never asked me personal questions before." The truth in those words deeply shamed him. For years, working in his house, and he had never truly been interested in who she was, what she dreamed of, what motivated her. A silence, filled with meaning, settled in the room. Kay found himself looking at Maren as if seeing her for the first time, not as a maid in a grey uniform, but as a woman of extraordinary honesty and depth. "And are you fulfilling that promise?" he finally asked. "The one I made to my mother." A sad smile touched Maren's lips. "I try, sir," she answered simply, "though it's not always easy." "Why?" Maren's gaze drifted to the window, where sunlight illuminated the gardens she helped tend. "Because to truly care for someone, that person must allow it," she explained with surprising clarity. "And you keep the world at a distance." The insight of that remark momentarily rendered Kay speechless. It was true. After his mother's death, he had built invisible but impenetrable walls around himself, allowing people to approach his money, his status, but not him. Suddenly feeling uncomfortable with the direction of his thoughts, he changed the subject. "My father said he found you studying medical books last night." Maren's cheeks flushed noticeably. "I didn't want to be intrusive," she explained hastily. "I just thought I might be more helpful if I understood your condition better." "That's the most considerate thing anyone has done for me in a long time," Kay said with absolute sincerity. Their eyes met for a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity. Something indefinable yet powerful passed between them. A connection of understanding, transcending words. The moment was broken by the sound of Kay's phone. It was a message from Letitia with a selfie from the most exclusive boutique in Colding. Choosing something special to lift your spirits, my love. The contrast couldn't have been more stark. Letitia was spending a fortune in a luxury store, while Maren spent hours studying how to better care for him. "Do you need anything else, sir?" Maren asked, returning to her professional tone. Kay wanted to say so much. He wanted to confess his lie, explain why he had orchestrated this elaborate deception, apologize for not truly seeing her for 5 years. But the words caught in his throat. "No, thank you, Maren. You may go." As the door closed behind her, Kay was engulfed by a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Guilt over his deception mingled with a growing certainty that this charade was revealing truths he might otherwise never have discovered. For the first time since this game began, he wondered who would be hurt more when the truth came out, and for the first time, he feared it might be the person who deserved it least. Looking at the photo of his mother on his bedside table, he felt a clear understanding form in his mind. His heart had already begun to acknowledge what his mind dared not yet accept, and it changed everything. The antique clock in the hallway chimed 11 a.m. with its characteristic low tone. It was the 5th day of the charade, and the Drummond mansion buzzed with unusual activity. Letitia had organized a lunch to lift Kay's spirits, inviting the closest friends from their social circle. In the kitchen, Maren efficiently coordinated 3 hired chefs for the occasion, simultaneously overseeing the preparation of Kay's favorite dishes, which she herself had suggested. The dark circles under her eyes betrayed sleepless nights spent between caring for her employer and her usual mansion duties. "Where should I put these flowers, señorita?" asked one of the assistants, holding a lavish floral arrangement that cost as much as Maren earned in a month. "In the main hall, please," she replied kindly. "And make sure to remove the lilies. Mr. K is allergic to them." Letitia, observing the final preparations in an 8,000 kroner suit, narrowed her eyes. "Leave them," she ordered the assistant. "They are the most beautiful in the arrangement." Maren remained firm, though her voice stayed respectful. "With all due respect, señorita, lilies make Mr. K sneeze. It could be uncomfortable for him and for the guests." "Since when does a maid make decisions about decor?" Letitia snapped, her mask of pleasantness slipping for a moment. Silence fell in the kitchen. The chefs exchanged awkward glances, continuing their work as if they heard nothing. "Since Mr. K personally entrusted me with his care," Maren replied calmly, with dignity. "But of course, the final word is yours, señorita." Before Letitia could respond, Elio Drummond entered the kitchen, impeccable in his dark blue suit and with an imposing presence. "Good morning," he greeted, assessing the situation with a keen eye. "Any problems?" Letitia's expression instantly shifted. "No, Mr. Elio," she replied with a radiant smile. "Just finalizing details to ensure everything is perfect." The elder man looked at the disputed floral arrangement. "Those lilies need to be removed," he said calmly. "My son has been allergic to them since childhood." Maren's quiet victory did not escape Letitia, whose smile tightened noticeably. "Of course, my oversight," she admitted, gesturing for the assistant to remove the flowers. Elio approached the stove, where Maren was overseeing a fragrant broth. "Chicken broth with fresh vegetables?" he asked, inhaling the aroma with pleasure. "It was my wife's signature dish on difficult days. Mrs. Sandra taught me this recipe, sir," Maren confirmed with a faint smile. She said it was a guaranteed mood lifter. Letitia watched this exchange with growing irritation. The closeness between the patriarch of the Drummond family and the housekeeper was something she hadn't expected. "Mr. Elio, the first guests are already arriving," she interjected, gently taking his arm. "Let's go to the hall." As they left, Maren finished preparing a tray for Kay. Unlike the lavish presentation for the guests, she chose simple tableware that he preferred for his personal meals. She placed a small wildflower in a glass, a personal touch she knew he would appreciate more than the expensive orchids on the main table. Entering Kay's room, she saw him looking out the window at the approaching luxury cars. He was dressed formally in a light blue shirt. She had ironed herself and sat in the wheelchair, which was part of his elaborate lie. "Your lunch, sir," she announced softly. Kay turned, his face lighting up at the sight of her. It was a subtle but undeniable reaction that Marin had begun to notice in recent days. "Just in time to save me," he said with a conspiratorial smile. "I have no idea how I'll survive 3 hours of superficial conversation about yachts and stocks." Marin placed the tray on the table and moved to assist him, but he gently stopped her. "Wait. Close the door for a minute," he asked quietly. "I need to talk to you." Intrigued, Marin complied and returned to him. Kay looked uncharacteristically nervous. "I've been thinking a lot these past few days," he began, choosing his words carefully. "About my life, my decisions, the people around me." Marin waited patiently, her hands clasped before her immaculate uniform. "I was thinking," he continued, hesitating, "what would you think of a person who lies to find the truth?" The question hung in the air like a fragile bubble. Marin considered her answer for a few seconds. "I think sometimes we look for complex answers to simple questions," she finally said. "Truth has a way of revealing itself without trickery." Something in her answer deeply touched Kay. His expression became thoughtful, almost vulnerable. And what if this person is so accustomed to people lying for gain that they no longer recognize sincerity? Marin looked him directly in the eye with an intensity unusual for her. "Then that person needs to learn to trust what they see day after day, not words or grand gestures." A silence filled with meaning settled between them. For a moment, it seemed Kay was about to confess something significant, but they were interrupted by the sound of the door opening. Letitia entered with a group of 4 elegantly dressed individuals: Philippe and Renata Andrade, heirs to a hotel chain, and the Lacerda brothers, renowned real estate investors. "And here is our brave patient," Letitia exclaimed theatrically. "Isn't it wonderful how he's enduring this ordeal?" The guests approached with expressions of feigned sympathy. Marin discreetly retreated to a corner, becoming invisible to everyone but Kay, whose gaze continued to seek her out as he mechanically greeted the guests. "What an unfortunate accident, my friend," commented Philippe, clapping Kay on the shoulder with perhaps too much force. "But with your money, you'll have the best specialists in the world." "Rehabilitation is key," added Renata, leaning in more than necessary. "My cousin found himself in a similar condition after a skiing accident, but within 6 months, he was skiing again. Of course, he spent a fortune at an exclusive center in Eller. Kay listened politely, but his eyes betrayed a profound boredom. Letitia, noticing his lack of enthusiasm, tried to liven the conversation. "We are considering options in Grådighed," she commented, possessively stroking Kay's hand. "Though my poor fiancé prefers to recover at home, don't you, my love?" The word fiancé made Marin involuntarily look up. Letitia's finger bore no ring, but the message was clear. "We haven't set a wedding date yet," Kay clarified, his voice suddenly firm. "In fact, I think this situation has shown us we have different priorities." An awkward silence hung over the group. Letitia laughed nervously. "Darling, the accident has affected your mood," she said, trying to regain control. "Let's move to the dining room. Everything is ready." "I prefer to eat here," Kay replied. "Marin has already brought my lunch." All eyes turned to the tray on the side table. The steaming broth, fresh bread, a light salad, and a simple wildflower in a glass of water. The simplicity of the arrangement stood in stark contrast to the luxury awaiting in the main dining room. "As you wish, darling," Letitia conceded with a strained smile. "Are you sure you don't want me to stay with you?" "I'm sure," he replied calmly. "Marin will assist if anything is needed." The guests exchanged bewildered glances as Letitia led them towards the exit, casting a final cold glance in Marin's direction. When they were alone, Kay let out a deep sigh. "Thank you for saving me," he said. "The soup is delicious." "It's your mother's recipe," Marin explained, stepping closer to adjust the napkin on his lap. "She always said it was better than any medicine. I miss her every day," Kay confessed with sudden vulnerability. She would have figured Letitia out in 5 minutes. Marin remained silent, understanding it wasn't her place to judge her employer's fiancé. "What do you think of her, Marin?" Kay asked directly. "And please, be honest." Caught off guard by the complex question, Marin chose her words carefully. "I think Señorita Leticia is exactly as she has always presented herself," she replied diplomatically, "and that you have always seen the truth, though perhaps preferred not to acknowledge it." The answer, both honest and cautious, elicited an approving smile from Kay. "You are far wiser than people think, aren't you?" "I simply observe, sir," she replied. "It's just that when you are in the shadows for a long time, you learn to see what happens in the light." Lunch in the main dining room lasted 3 hours. From Kay's room, he could hear exaggerated laughter, toasts with champagne at 500 kroner a bottle, superficial conversations about real estate in Sjælland, investments, and rising stocks. It was his world, the circle to which he belonged by birth and fortune, yet for the first time he felt completely detached from it. At 4:30, as the last guest departed, Leticia returned to the room. Her face bore the marks of several glasses of champagne and barely contained irritation. "Your friends have left," she announced dryly. "You could have made a little more effort, Kay. Philippe is considering investing in our mall project." "I don't recall approving any mall project," he replied, watching her with new interest. Leticia waved a hand irritably. "Details. The point is, while you're here pretending to be an invalid, we're losing business opportunities." The word pretending hung in the air like a threat. Kay felt a chill run down his spine. "What do you mean, pretending?" he asked cautiously. Leticia's eyes gleamed dangerously. "Oh, Kay, I'm not stupid," she said, stepping closer and leaning in, her face inches from his. "I saw you move your leg yesterday, thinking no one was watching. I don't know what game you're playing, but it's starting to annoy me." Kay's heart pounded. His deception was revealed, but he didn't feel the expected panic, only a strange sense of relief. "And what are you going to do about it?" he asked, unexpectedly calm. Leticia smiled, her calculating demeanor returning. "Nothing for now," she replied, stroking his cheek with feigned tenderness. "I suppose you have your reasons for this farce. Perhaps it will even benefit me. After all, a vulnerable man needs a devoted wife even more, doesn't he?" Her tone made it clear she had decided to use the deception to her advantage, rather than expose it. This was precisely the manipulation that confirmed everything Kay had begun to suspect. "Leticia," he said firmly, "I think we need to talk about our future." "Of course, darling," she replied with venomous sweetness. "But I must go now. I have a spa appointment I simply cannot cancel. The stress of caring for you is ruining my skin." As the door closed behind her, Kay sat motionless for several minutes. The realization that Leticia knew the truth but chose to continue the game for her own gain completely altered the dynamics of his plan. His thoughts were interrupted by Marin's arrival with a tray of tea. "I thought you might like something warm after such a busy day," she said, placing the cup on the table. Kay looked at her with new clarity. While Leticia played chess with his emotions, calculating every move for her own benefit, Marin simply stood by, day after day, offering support, expecting nothing in return. "Marin," he said suddenly, "if you could do anything you wanted in life, if money and circumstances were not an issue, what would you choose?" The question seemed to surprise her. For a moment, the professional mask slipped, revealing the woman beneath the uniform. "I would study medicine," she replied with unexpected passion. "I always wanted to be a doctor, to help those who suffer. But when my mother fell ill, I had to abandon my studies." This answer deeply moved Kay. Before him was a woman with a noble aspiration, forced by circumstances to serve people who barely saw her as human. "How old are you, Marin?" "Sir, it's not too late to study," he observed. "Could you not continue where you left off?" A sad smile touched Marin's lips. "Perhaps someday," she replied with resignation. "But for now, my mother still needs expensive treatments, and this job pays better than any other I could hope for without a university degree." The simplicity of her dilemma, the dignity with which she accepted the limitations imposed by her situation, ignited an admiration in Kay that he had never felt for anyone. "Do you know what my father told me yesterday?" he remarked, seemingly changing the subject. He said he'd never seen anyone work so hard for so little recognition. Marin's cheeks flushed. "I'm just doing my job, sir." "No," Kay contradicted firmly. "You're doing so much more. You care for this house as if it were your own. You worry about people who barely thank you. You study medical books in your free time to better care for a man who hasn't even bothered to truly know you in 5 years. Marin lowered her gaze, clearly feeling awkward from the acknowledgement. "Mrs. Sandra always said perfection is not an action but a habit," she mumbled. "I don't know how to do things any other way." Something inside Kay broke at that moment. The contrast between this woman of unwavering principles and the manipulator who was about to become his wife was so absolute, so definitive, that he asked himself, "How could I have been so blind?" "Marin, there's something I need to tell you," he began, resolved to confess his deception. But before he could continue, the door burst open. It was Elio, with an expression of alarm on his usually imperturbable face. "Kay, it's your Aunt Vera," he announced in a serious voice. "She's had a heart attack. We need to go to the hospital immediately." The world seemed to stop. Aunt Vera, his mother's sister, the only relative he truly had left besides his father, was in danger. "Prepare the car," Kay replied, momentarily forgetting his charade. "I'll be ready in 5 minutes." As his father left to give instructions to the driver, Kay found himself at a crossroads. He looked at Marin, in whose eyes genuine concern was reflected, and made his decision. Slowly, under her astonished gaze, he stood up. "Sir, what are you doing?" she whispered, her eyes wide with disbelief. "My injury." "There is no injury, Marin," he confessed, feeling an immense burden lift from his shoulders. "It never was. It was all a lie to see if Letitia truly loved me." The shock on Marin's face gradually gave way to understanding, and then to something more complex. Disappointment. "It was all a farce?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Sleepless nights, care, concern." "I'm sorry," Kay mumbled, too late realizing the harm caused. "I never considered how it would affect others." Marin took a step back. Her face resumed the professional mask she had begun to shed in recent days. "I'll inform the kitchen that you won't be dining at home tonight," she said in a neutral voice, as if she hadn't just learned she had unwittingly become part of a cruel deception. "Marin, wait!" Kay tried to stop her. "Please, let me explain." But she was already heading for the door. Her posture was straight, her dignity unwavering, despite the blow. "Your aunt needs you," she replied, not turning around. "Don't make her wait." As the door closed behind her, Kay understood that in his meticulously crafted game to learn the truth about Letitia, he had deeply wounded the only person who had shown him genuine care. And as he prepared to go to the hospital, one certainty crystallized in his mind. He had gained clarity regarding his relationship with Letitia, but the price was the loss of trust from someone infinitely more valuable. The Riggs Hospital had gleamed under the night lights. Its glass facade reflected the stars like a giant mirror. It was 11:15 p.m. when Kay emerged through the automatic doors, weary but relieved. His Aunt Vera was in stable condition after 6 hours of tension and medical procedures. "The car is ready, son," Elio announced, waiting for him in the lobby. "Are you sure you don't want to stay? The doctors say she'll be asleep until tomorrow." "No," Kay replied, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "Besides, I have urgent matters at home." During the limousine ride, Kay remained silent, watching the city lights through the tinted glass. The look of disappointment on Marin's face haunted him like a ghost. "Will you tell me what really happened?" Elio finally asked. "I know you well enough to understand that something has changed." Kay took a deep breath. "Marin learned the truth," he confessed. "Or rather, I revealed it myself when the situation with Aunt Vera occurred." Elio nodded slowly. "And how did she react?" "With dignity," Kay replied, feeling the weight of that word. "As in everything." A knowing smile touched the elder man's lips. As the limousine passed through the grand gates of the Drummond mansion, it was nearly midnight. But to Kay's surprise, the kitchen light was still on. Entering through the side door, he found Maren meticulously preparing a tray of sandwiches, fruit, and hot tea. She was still in her uniform, though her workday had officially ended 6 hours ago. "Maren," he mumbled, surprised by her presence. "What are you doing here so late?" She jumped slightly but quickly regained her professional composure. "I thought you would be hungry returning from the hospital, sir," she replied in a neutral voice, avoiding his gaze. "How is your aunt?" "Stable," Kay answered, touched by her gesture. "The doctors say she'll make a full recovery." Maren visibly relaxed. "I'm so glad. Mrs. Vera was always very kind to me." An awkward silence hung between them. Kay watched her hands, slightly red from constant work, neatly arrange the tray. "You should have gone home hours ago," he finally said. "I was worried," she simply replied, as if it were the most natural explanation in the world. The simplicity of her answer, the lack of reproach or bitterness, struck Kay harder than any accusation. "Maren, regarding what happened earlier, there's no need for you to explain anything," she interrupted him with respectful firmness. "I owe you an explanation," he insisted. "An apology." Maren finally looked up, and her eyes reflected a mixture of restrained pain and resignation. "What do I owe you?" she replied, with a dignity that rendered him speechless. "Respect. The same respect I've shown you all these years." Before Kay could answer, the kitchen door swung open abruptly. It was Letitia, dressed in a black silk ensemble that was clearly not sleepwear. "Kay," she exclaimed with feigned alarm, "I didn't know you were back." The air around her smelled faintly of alcohol and expensive perfume. Kay noticed a crucial detail. She was wearing a different shade of lipstick than in the morning. "Where have you been, Letitia?" he asked calmly. "I was at the spa, as I told you," she replied too quickly. "Then I went home to change. My phone must have died." Maren lowered her gaze discreetly, continuing her work as the lie hung in the air like cheap perfume. "Interesting," Kay observed. "Because I called your apartment. Your assistant said you were at a business dinner with Adrian Mata." Letitia's perfectly made-up face tightened visibly. "Adrian wanted to discuss mall plans," she improvised, quickly regaining her composure. "It was strictly professional." "Of course," Kay replied with irony in his voice. "So professional that you forgot to mention you'd be dining with a man who tried to buy my company last year." Letitia narrowed her eyes, noticing the shift in his demeanor. "I don't recall needing to report my every move to you," she snapped back, slowly shedding her sweet mask. "Especially given your current condition." The tension in the kitchen was palpable. Maren silently finished preparing the tray and was about to leave. "Stay, Maren," Kay commanded with unexpected firmness. "This conversation concerns you too." Letitia glanced at the housekeeper with masked disdain. What could this maid possibly have to do with our affairs? Kay took a deep breath, making a decision that had been brewing in his soul for days. "Maren witnessed something important," he began. His voice gained a new confidence. "She witnessed how you treat people when you believe they can't flatter you, how you abandon the one you supposedly love when it becomes inconvenient, how money and status are all that truly matter to you." Letitia's face changed. The mask of pleasantness fell completely, revealing a hidden fury. "You dare judge me?" she hissed. "You, who pretended to be paralyzed to manipulate everyone around you." Maren couldn't hide a slight flinch of surprise. Letitia smiled sinisterly. "Ah, she didn't tell you, darling," she said with venomous sweetness. "Your adored employer has been perfectly healthy all this time. All your sacrifices, sleepless nights, your touching devotion, it was all part of his experiment." Kay stepped forward, instinctively placing himself between the two women. "Enough, Letitia," he said with an authority that surprised even himself. "Maren already knows the truth. I told her myself this afternoon." The surprise on Letitia's face was fleeting, quickly replaced by a calculating smile. "I understand what's happening here," she said, assessing the situation with a fresh eye. "You've fallen for the maid. How touching." She approached Kay, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "But let's be realistic, sweetie. You can have fun with her if you want. You're not the first millionaire to do so, but we both know that for the role of a wife, you need someone on your level." The cruelty of her words, delivered as if Maren were not present or mattered, solidified everything Kay had begun to feel. "You're right about one thing, Letitia," he replied clearly. "I need someone on my level, with honesty, compassion, and true dignity." He paused significantly. "Qualities that Maren possesses in abundance, and you, with all your money and connections, have never demonstrated." Letitia's eyes widened in outrage. "Are you breaking up with me?" she asked incredulously. "Over a maid. I'm breaking up with you because I finally see who you truly are," Kay corrected. "My accident didn't create your indifference and shallowness. It merely revealed it." Letitia let out a bitter laugh, quickly regaining the composure of a predator. "You'll regret this," she warned, elegantly adjusting her coat. "Once the news about your Cinderella wears off, you'll remember that you belong to our world, not hers." With that, she headed for the door, pausing to cast a final, venomous look at Maren. "Enjoy your 5 minutes of attention, dear. Men like him always return to women like me." As the door closed behind her, the kitchen was filled with a heavy silence. Maren remained still. Her face was an inscrutable mask of restrained emotion. "I should go," she murmured, reaching for her bag. "Please, don't go," Kay pleaded, his voice devoid of any pretense. "I can't stay. It's been a long day," she replied, avoiding his gaze. "And I need to be here early tomorrow." "There won't be a tomorrow," Kay said firmly. "You will not return to this house as a maid, Maren." She visibly paled, interpreting his words as a dismissal. "I understand," she said with dignity, though her voice trembled slightly. "I'll collect my belongings in the morning." "You misunderstand," Kay corrected quickly, stepping closer. "I don't want you to return as a maid, because I want you to return as a completely different person." Confusion and caution mingled in Maren's eyes. "I don't understand, sir." Kay took a deep breath, choosing words to express the transformation he had undergone. "For 5 years, you have been by my side every day, caring for my home, remembering my preferences, honoring my mother's memory. And in the past few days, you have shown me more devotion, compassion, and genuine respect than anyone in my circle." He paused, gathering his courage. "I am ashamed to admit that it took a charade to see what was always in front of me." Maren's eyes welled up, but she maintained her composure. "What exactly are you saying, sir?" "I am surrounded by fake people my entire life," he answered, his voice gaining strength. "People who are only interested in my bank account and my last name, and you are the only one who truly saw me, not Kay, but the Drummond heir." He took another step, closing the distance between them. "I want to know you, Maren, not as my maid, but as the remarkable woman you are. I want to know your dreams, your fears, your hopes. I want a chance to earn your trust, to prove that I am worthy of someone like you." A single tear traced a path down Maren's cheek, breaking her careful composure. "Why should I trust you, sir?" she asked with painful honesty. "How can I know this isn't another test or experiment?" The question struck him, but Kay acknowledged its validity. "You can't," he admitted humbly. "I can only ask that you give me the opportunity to prove it with actions, not words." He pulled an envelope from his jacket and placed it on the table. "This is my first attempt," he explained. "It's a full scholarship to the Asp Medical University. It covers tuition, books, and a monthly allowance, so you can dedicate yourself fully to your studies. No conditions, no expectations. It's yours, regardless of what you decide about us." Maren's eyes widened in disbelief. "I can't accept this," she mumbled, though her voice betrayed her heart's deepest desire. "It's not a gift," Kay corrected. "It's an investment in someone who deserves the opportunity to fulfill her potential," he added with a slight smile. "It includes full medical coverage for your mother, the best specialists, the most advanced procedures." The mention of her mother broke Maren's last defenses. Tears flowed freely down her cheeks. "Why?" she asked simply. "Why would you do this for me?" Kay looked at her with an intensity that spoke louder than words. "Because during my supposed paralysis, I was happier with your simple presence than I have been in 3 years by Letitia's side with all her world of empty luxuries, he confessed. Because when I thought my aunt was in danger, you were the one I thought of. And because when I could finally stand from that wheelchair, the only thing I wanted was to be on your level. A heavy silence, filled with possibility, settled in the space between them. Finally, Maren began, her voice a mere whisper. My shift ends at 7 a.m., she said, timidly touching the envelope with her fingers. If you truly want to know me, we could have coffee. As equals. The simplicity of her offer, the dignity with which she set her terms, deeply touched Kay. It would be my honor, he replied with absolute sincerity. At that moment, the kitchen door opened again. It was Elio, surveying the scene with discerning eyes. Forgive my intrusion, he said, though a smile indicated he had no regrets about entering. I just wanted to ensure everything was all right. Everything is perfect, Father, Kay replied, not taking his eyes off Maren. For the first time in a long time, the elder man nodded with thinly veiled approval. Maren, it's too late for you to go home alone, he observed casually. I'll have the driver take you. Thank you, Mr. Eller, she replied, gradually regaining her composure. That's very kind. It's not kindness, it's what's right, the elder man corrected. Something my late wife always valued above all else. As Maren gathered her belongings, Elio approached his son. Your mother would be proud, he murmured, gently squeezing his shoulder. You are finally seeing with your heart, not just your eyes. As Maren headed for the door, Kay escorted her to the hall. Under the dim hall light, she looked different. Younger, more vulnerable, yet simultaneously stronger, as if an invisible burden had been lifted from her shoulders. Until tomorrow, Sir Kay, she bid formally, though a new warmth could be heard in her voice. Until tomorrow, Maren, he replied. And please, just Kay. A small smile touched her lips. I'll have to get used to that, Kay. The way she uttered his name without formality or hierarchy was more intimate than any touch. Watching the car disappear down the driveway, Kay understood with crystal clarity the most valuable truth his charade had taught him. Sometimes, you have to lose everything you think is important to discover what truly matters. And in his case, what truly mattered had a name, a face, and a dignity that no fortune could buy. The end. If this story touched your heart, please give us a like and share it with those you love. Every like helps us continue to bring stories that inspire and move. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell to not miss our next stories. And tell us in the comments, have you ever met someone who loved you truly, without self-interest? From which city are you watching us?